Good morning.
Good morning.
That's good. Let's do it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Wonderful. I'm thankful for all of you all being out here early. I know 11 o'clock is usually not early, but when you're at BE Modern Man, it is early. Hopefully you had a great time last night. Mark Vieira and the crew killed it as they usually do. We had a great time. Lovely to see all of you this morning, and I'm very grateful to be on this esteemed panel with some, as I would call, juggernauts in leadership. We've heard some of your credentials, gentlemen, but I want you to introduce yourselves to the crowd in a little bit more of an eloquent way, thinking about this question. And let me back up for a second. As I thought about this conversation about leadership and winning people over, I've been fortunate to see leadership for the last 48 years. My father, Charles Jr. I actually had a moment to call him. Usually sometimes when I'm thinking, how do I figure out things or conscious questions that I want to ask, I give him a call. So I gave him a call this morning. He's 90 years old, has Alzheimer's, but this morning his light was there, right? And so I was very grateful. I said, Dad, I'm on this panel. What would you do? He said, well, you know what I would always do. So what is that, Dad? He's like, well, I taught you, right? You know exactly what to do. I don't even need to tell you. And I said, Dad, you're right. You gave me the foundation to do this. So I'm very grateful for my father. So he always said to me, right, anything that you want to be great at, you have to be able to fail at it time and time again. So as you think about your leadership, gentlemen, and as you introduce yourselves, I want you to think of what phrase actually grounds your leadership day to day. Ron?
Well, I would start with the focus on failure, which you just raised, and I would say you have to think about failure as the progressive elimination of things on the way to success. And so a lot of people think about failure as a fundamental internal attribute, as opposed to cross. Oh yeah, my mic. Thanks. You have to think about, probably a better way to say it is that success is a progressive elimination of failure. That you literally fail your way to success. And I can tell you, if you let your failures define you, you will never get to where you can get. And failure has another element, which is risk. And most people turn out to be risk averse. And it turns out that the biggest risk you can ever take in life is not taking risk. And you need to figure out whether the risk you're taking is a reversible risk. If it doesn't work out, you move on. Or is it an irreversible, like you're jumping off a 20-story building? And so I think those would be just a couple of kind of opening comments I would make, and we'll have a chance to come back.
Right. Thanks, Ron.
Well, I look at it as I take a different approach to it, because I don't believe anybody fail at anything. And I tell people to take that word out of your vocabulary, because you're trying to do something, and we all are trying to figure life out. I mean, you learn how to walk because you saw somebody else walking. And we all are role models to somebody. So I don't believe in that you fail at anything. It may not come out the way that you wanted, but you didn't fail at it because you tried. And as long as you're trying, then you're going to continue to be successful. It's just a law of chance. When you're going to the casino or whatever, if you keep trying, you're going to eventually win. Well, you never can beat the house, because they don't ever run out of money. You will. But I tell people just continue to do it, because when you use the word failure, it just sounds so negative. It just sounds like that you're less than something, and you're not. And that you continue to put your mind to something that you probably eventually you'll figure it out. And I always say everything's gonna work out anyway. Everything is just gonna be just fine. Just like the storm coming through, people get all upset. Everything's gonna be just fine. Just live.
Way to go. I like that. I like that. Well, you're right, Shannon. Yesterday was the 14th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and so I moved to New Orleans 7 days before Hurricane Katrina hit. Moved from Virginia Beach, packed all my stuff. 14 years later, the city is actually doing okay. We actually can't figure out how to drain the water from the city 14 years later, but we're doing okay. And so I like that motto. So as we begin our conversation, I think about the conversations that I have with my colleague at CNN, Mohammed Leela. and he tells me, don't bury the lead. So I'm gonna try to ask some big questions first. So if you look back, and both of you have tremendous careers, illustrious careers, various stints at different leadership positions. What are some of the greatest lessons have you learned in your leadership journey about leading people? Ron?
I think one of the, for me, hardest and most difficult lessons, but one of the most important, is that when you're leading teams of people to accomplish a really critical task, if you're success-focused, you tend to focus so much on getting the task done that you don't pay enough attention to the people. And the headline on this is, the consideration for the people has to exceed the consideration for the task of getting the work done. And it doesn't mean you do it by lowering your orientation to producing the right result. It means you do it by increasing your focus on the people themselves, getting to know them, understanding their issues, and showing consideration for them as individual human beings. And what you'll find is the task gets done, and you have not only demonstrated leadership, but you end up with followership.
Mm-hmm.
Well, leadership is about influence. That's all leader is. It's an ability to influence somebody to do something. And as Ron said, the task or the tactical part of it, that's the managerial part, because management is just working on things. You're trying to, finish a project, or you're trying to launch a new product or service or whatever. That's the management piece of it. The leadership part of now is your ability to get in someone's head and they see you as a role model and they want to do it. You come from a transactional is, I pay you to do a job. I pay you X number of dollars per hour, or I pay you a salary per month. This is what I want X. That's transactional. Then you get into the transformation. Now I am trying to influence you to do a job and why you need to do the job, talking about a vision and how do I motivate you to do that. But in order to get there, you got to understand who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. See, that's what happens to most leaders. If you talk to most employees, they'll tell you the manager don't know what they're doing. That's the first thing they say. They always say that. You just go in this restaurant, or I talk to the people of service in this place. How's the management team? The first thing they're going to say, they don't know what they're doing. Because they haven't taken time to understand that individual and understand the team member and what makes the team member tick. Because we all bring something different to the workplace. And you can't separate it. Leave that at the front door. You can't leave anything at the front door. You one whole person. So what you are at home, you're going to be at work. And it is up to the leader to tap into what motivates you and what drives you to do something. And that's where the secret sauce of being a great leader, that's where that comes from.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate that. Yeah. So if you think about some of your employees, and I actually talked to a couple of them as we were coming in today, and they, right, I wanted to get a little bit of inside about Shannon Brown. How would you think, because they speak so highly of you, and you've been with FedEx so long, so FedEx has got to be a great company. How would you describe your leadership style, and why do people follow you? Because look at the room here. Many of the people in the front row are from FedEx.
Well, I treat them as an individual, and I understand who I am as a person. They may do some things I don't like. If they're doing the job, I really don't care. I don't ever believe, or I've never run into a bad employee. Because I don't believe in that. I don't think you have bad employees. I think you have bad environments, and you may have bad leaders. But I don't believe in bad employees. I've never seen one. And I've been managing at FedEx since 1981. So I've been doing this for a long time, and not in the same locations. I've moved 11 or 12 times, and I've been successful in all of my leadership positions because I believe that people can do what they want to do if the environment is right. And so that's what I spend time on, creating an environment so they want to do a good job and be innovative, because everybody can do something. And then I just have to look at me, why am I looking at them from my point of view? Success and failure is all the same, as a matter of somebody's opinion. Right? And so I can determine if I want them to be successful and tell them they're going to be successful. That's what drives people. And you give them the freedom to do it the way they want to do it, but it may be the way that you wouldn't do it, but you deal with that as a personal issue and get out of the way and let them do their thing. And I can tell you, I tell all people that work with me, I give you my playbook. and I still beat you because I got a great team.
Right. I love that. I love that. Ron, Shannon just said something that really resonates with me. He talked about environment and culture. You've led at the highest level, Fortune 100 company. How do you create from that top position, how do you create that culture and that environment where your employees want to win for you?
Well, one, I think it starts with listening. And just to back up, a lot of people may not know the story of Aetna, but when I joined Aetna in 2001, we were losing $1 million a day. By the end of the year, we'd lost $365 million. The year I retired, 2011, we made $2 billion. And that transformation was a transformation of a company where people were embarrassed to say they worked at the company, to a place where 3 years running, we were voted the most admired company in our industry by the readers of Fortune magazine. I didn't do that. The team did it, and the culture did. And the culture was really about transforming the organization from a hierarchical organization that didn't listen, that didn't engage, and really wasn't responsive to either customers or employees. So what I would say is culture trumps strategy. And what Shannon was talking about was really the culture that he created in the company, where people were respected, engaged, and given the opportunity to bring what they could and would. My mic just died. Oh, there
you go.
What they would and could bring to contribute to the organization. In my book, which is called Learning to Lead, it's in 3 sections. The first section is learning to lead yourself, because that's really the fundamental building block. The second section is learning to lead other people, learning to lead others. And the third is really learning to lead organizations. And it turns out you can't lead organizations well if you don't lead yourself well.
So tease that a little bit. I mean, here's your opportunity. Why do we go out and buy this book, right? And especially start with leading yourself.
I would say most people in this room did not know what they were wanted to do when they were in their early 20s. And many of them may not know what they want to do now. It's a reality. And so the question is, the book gives you a way to think about how do you get traction and how do you move toward a horizon. And I would sum it up in the first section in really 2 words: be better, every year. And I would say my goal, 15% better in your personal life, in your business life. We can all convince ourselves we can be 2% better or 3%. But if you're going to be 15% better, you got to get really serious about what you're going to do. And you compound that over a long period of time, it will transform you and transform your life. So the reason to buy the book is very simply to figure out how to be better, whether you're focused on leading yourself, leading other people, or leading your organization if it's your business.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So make sure that you go out and buy the book, Learning to Lead.
I do have to say it's number 7 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list.
There you go. Let's give him a hand clap. I love that. So, Shani, you had this conversation. You don't like the word failure, so I'm trying to figure out in this question how to reinvigorate the narrative around failure. So we'll say challenges, right? So one of the things, if you go back to organizational culture, I've been with Camelback Ventures for the last 10 months now. And so we are building culture as we are bringing people on. There are 9 of us. We're an organization that is an early stage startup accelerator for women and entrepreneurs of color. We think about equity in everything that we do. And so our organizational culture starts with 100% responsibility, right? Why do you think as a leader it's important for your people to see you taking 100% responsibility when things go left in your organization?
Well, a leader has to take 100% responsibility because you own it. And that's why you're the leader, because everything that happens, you say, is my fault. That's what leaders do. Because it's something that I didn't do, which caused something that to not work right, but at the end of the day, I own it. Because once I own it, then I can do something about it. If I blame it on my team, then I can't do anything about it. Because now I've tried to take or shift the ownership of the problem to them, But as a leader, you own everything. It's just your fault. And you just have to accept that being a leader. That's just it. It comes with the territory.
Right. Ron, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would have maybe a slightly different view, and it's maybe where I kind of how I see the world, which is when I'm running a major company, we had in those days probably we're about 50 billion in revenue. We had about 60,000 employees. So when you're sitting there and you're in a quarterly business review, and someone will say was less than successful in hitting their target, and their goal was to earn that quarter $200 million. Now, they had all the resources, all the capability. As a leader of that unit, they had to own it. What you find is someone comes in and they earn $198 million and they declare success. Well, the goal was 200. It wasn't 198 million. And the answer is that only when people own the fact that there is a shortfall do we go to work on figuring out, as Shannon said, what should have been done differently. And I think that one of the things I spent a lot of time on was figuring out how to have that conversation in a way that says, you missed doesn't make you a bad person, but let's be honest about what we set out to do, what we didn't do, and then let's work together to figure out what we could have done differently to hit that target. And so as a leader, you have to hold people accountable for producing results. And when you're running an organization and you have multiple departments where you're not really the one on the hook for it, you're on the hook to your shareholders for the aggregate enterprise, you really have to have those tough conversations.
Right.
But you have to do it the right way. And when you start the shouting, the screaming, if you can't do it, I'll fire you and get somebody in there, the one thing I'll guarantee you is no one will ever tell you bad news again.
And that goes back to creating and maintaining your organizational culture. When your team, when your organization sees people at the top taking 100% responsibility, they too begin to think through, how can I even proactively take 100% responsibility? And that's something that we do at Camelback. We're always asking that question. Where is something that you failed at, right, that you could have taken 100% responsibility? So I'm going to throw that to you as you think through your careers. What is something that you failed at, or you had to challenge at, because I know you don't like that word, Shannon, right? What is something that there was a challenge, right, and that you did not take 100% responsibility for?
Well, I don't know of a time that, I haven't taken 100% responsibility for something that was my responsibility. As I always tell people, the fish stinks from the head. So if anything is wrong, it starts at the top. Because if you don't fix the top, you can't fix anything else below the top. And yeah, I mean, that's always a challenge, and that's what leaders do, and that's what leaders really get excited about, because it's a challenge. I'm looking for the next challenge. As they say, I'm someone in the neighborhood looking for the next fight. I don't want things to be calm, because they're not going to be calm for a long time. Once you solve this problem, you got to go work on the next one, because there's always something else to do, especially in times like these now where things are just moving so fast. So you just have to stay ahead of the game of what is the next challenge and what do you need to do to solve the problem. But it really comes right back down to people at the end of the day, because they're the ones that are going to have to solve it. And how do you create the environment so you can get the innovation from them? Because I've never had someone to disappoint me when I asked them to do something. They always gave me more than what I've asked for. I set the bar here. They've always come in higher than what I expected when you allow them to do it. The biggest problem with management is management gets in the way. That's what happens, and that's what I see when things are not going right within my organization. And I got another organization. The title you gave me, I don't do that anymore. It's the HR. I run a whole division,
right.
42,000 people. We move in 3 or 4 million pieces a day. I can't be everywhere within those organizations. There's no way. But I have to trust my team to manage it. Down to the frontline employee to make that happen, because that's what my customer sees. That frontline employee, so I do a reverse of the organizational pyramid, put them on the top, and then put myself on the bottom. Because everything I need to be doing is trying to help them to do their job better. And everybody that works for me, how do I support them so you can get a purple promise, a satisfied customer out of each transaction, and that's really what the goal is.
Right, right. Ron, back, and thank you, Shannon, for that, but back to the question. I think about, in your illustrious career, your long career, where was an opportunity for you where, looking back, I could have taken 100% responsibility, and I didn't? And how did you make the change from that?
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is that this is a pretty big room. The mistakes I've made would fill the walls of this room in the tiniest type you can imagine. Okay. And so this notion of things not working out, failing, is just really, really important in terms of growth and development, and not being defined by that. You look at people who are entrepreneurs, a lot of them fail at multiple businesses and then go on to success because they've eliminated what didn't work. In my case, what I would say is that the biggest mistakes I've made that I had to learn to take ownership with centered around waiting too long to move people out of the organization.
Right.
I knew that they weren't doing the job. They were coached, they were counseled, they were given all types of assistance. But I'm asking somebody who is good at accounting to be good at innovation, and they just didn't have it. And so it didn't mean that they had to necessarily leave the company, but they had to leave that role. The other thing that it took me a long time to figure out how to take ownership for was really making certain I was doing the right job of developing the next generation of talent.
Right.
Now I have 5 people who are CEOs of major companies who've worked for me, and that is a record, and it's one I'm very proud of. And it's because of, 1, they were capable people, but 2, they got the developmental opportunity. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, because when I got promoted, I knew how to do what I used to do, and I had a new job, but I loved to do what I used to do. And so I would do more of their job than I should have done. And it took me a while to realize that's not my job anymore.
Right.
So those would be just a few examples where they were failures, and I had to come to grips because there were personal changes I had to make in what I did and how I did it. Now, the other thing I'll close on in this is, the other thing I learned to do was to accept criticism from people. And I would always close my one-on-one meetings with my staff by saying, what do I need to do better? How can I do a better job of helping the organization? What have I said that offended somebody somewhere unintentionally? What do I need to do differently? So those would be just a few points.
Right, right. I think it's critical that you ended with the ability to take feedback. And I think as leaders, as we're winning organizations, as we're winning people, winning our teams, that even though we're at these various levels, feedback is so critical still to our growth. And that's one of the things that even my CEO talks about at his level, like, continue to tell me, like, where can I grow? Where can I be better? How can I take 100% responsibility for things? I even think about it, it's funny, as a baseball coach, when I was coaching high school baseball, the years that we won were the years that I was taking 100% responsibility for pulling my pitcher out at the right time. Those years that I didn't and left that person in, we lost. And so really taking accountability for that. There are a lot of young brothers in the room who are aspiring leaders, and we're grateful for Sean and for all of our young brothers who are in the room. I think about acclaimed author C. Erskine Brown's novel, A Cry Among Men, which chronicles the challenges of successful black and brown men and their experiences climbing the corporate ladder. Too often when we succeed, it's marred by jealousy and hate. So what are some of the challenges that you have actually faced? And so our young brothers can hear, and what were some of the strategies that you used to actually overcome those challenges? Shannon?
What I tell young African-American men, because what I see in them is, in a corporate environment, they're afraid to take chances. And you see the difference when you see the African-American female, she's not. And I don't know if it's a sense of self-confidence sometimes, or they just kind of feel that with everything that goes on around, they just risk averse and not take that. But to try to get them to stand up present themselves, ask questions, and show that level of confidence is what I try to work on with them. And I just, I did talk to me like you talk to your friends. And present yourself in a way that people understand who you are and what you want, and don't be afraid to stand up and be who you are.
Right.
Because you bring a lot of power to the workplace. And trying to do that coaching with them, I can tell you that's really, really has been something that I'm taking on now, is to try to help them to matriculate through that corporate environment so they don't become so upset and feel that they can do anything. And that's the biggest challenge that I'm working with now.
Right. Ron, before you answer, I want to ask Shannon a follow-up question. You talk about the confidence that our sisters have. Why is it that you think that there's a disparity when it comes to our brothers and our sisters, particularly in leadership positions?
Well, it comes at an early age. I mean, if you take a 3-year-old young girl and you take a 3-year-old boy and you look at the development, especially from verbal skills, the little girls going to outmatch them.
On
Hands
average,
down.
two years ahead of us early on, yes.
Hands down. So I think it starts there. And then I think, throughout the development of life and the participation in society, I think that's really where it starts. And somebody gives them confidence, because that's really where I got all of my confidence from my mother. And she just didn't, allow me to do anything different but to be strong.
Right.
Or I had to face the consequences with her. Which is some things that get you locked up today. Of what she did to me.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so that's where I got it from.
Right. Ron, back to our original question. Thinking about the longevity of your experiences as a leader, what challenges have you faced? And what are the strategies that you've done to overcome those challenges?
I would say, one I would say is that you will often find yourself the only. It's sad, but true. And you need to be comfortable with that. The other thing, which very early in my career, I worked with a lot of people who were often certain and often wrong.
Wow.
And I censored myself to be kind of rarely certain, but much more right. And it goes back to something Shannon talked about. I didn't speak up as much. When I spoke, I felt I had to be 100% right. Other people like 10% right. And so really having that sense of engagement, and as you move through, when you sit in the boardroom, they go around and everybody has to have an opinion on everything. You can't not say something. And that was a lesson I learned along the way. The other thing which I found, and these days this gets tougher and tougher, but I always say assume positive intent. Because you'll come in, somebody will look at your hair, your dress, your tie, and say something. Now, I've always applied the rule, assume positive intent. Because if they're a jerk, it will be very clear on the third or fourth comment. And when you assume positive intent, you eliminate a whole lot of needless friction and anxiety in the workplace.
Wow.
And so this notion of assuming positive intent doesn't mean you let somebody back up a truck and run over you. It simply means that if somebody just doesn't know how to engage with you because you are the only, and often the only person at that level they have ever met, unfortunately, and you assume positive intent, you will find that they can turn out to be very instrumental in your life and career.
Right.
And I'll close on one story. How many people in here have been ice fishing? Okay, there's one person besides me, 2 or 3. I went to Minnesota early in my career. I thought I was going to like Alaska or something. I grew up in Chicago on the south side, so going to Minnesota in those days was like a long, long way. But guys I worked with said, let's go fishing. They said, I said, what kind of fishing do you do? It's the dead of winter. They said, we go ice fishing. So I got out of my comfort zone, which is another very important issue, and went ice fishing with these guys. Had a good time. Don't think I'll make a career out of it, but it worked out well. 10 years later, one of the best opportunities I ever got on a job came from one of those guys I met going ice fishing. And so getting out of your comfort zone is extremely important. and being comfortable speaking up and recognizing if you've got an opinion, you really ought to share it.
Right, right. I love that answer, and thank you so much. It goes back to that concept of 100% responsibility. You are still responsible to how you feel, right? When things happen, racism, discrimination, things happen, you still have the responsibility in how you're going to react to that. And I think that's a part of that culture and environment that you embrace so heavily at FedEx, Shannon, that you're creating, that you still have that 100% responsibility in how you comport yourself. So thank you. One last question before we open it up for our audience questions. And it's a question that I think is important to all of us. As organizations begin to recognize the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion in regard to their bottom line, as well as the well-being of their employees,
We only have one, right?
the look of organizations are actually changing dramatically, right? As black males in leadership positions, Shannon, you being the chief diversity officer, Ron, having you think about diversity at every phase as the CEO, what steps have you taken personally to ensure that you can lead effectively and be the voice for everyone in your organization? And since, Shannon, you're the chief diversity officer, I would love to hear your comments.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. Basically, at the end of the day, what personal work are you doing to make sure that you can lead and actually be a voice for everyone in your organization?
Well, you know, the part of that question is, I don't ever think about how can I lead. It's just part of me. So it just comes natural to me. But I can tell you that when you look at the 42,000 people that I have, and then as the chief diversity officer, I'm responsible for all of them from a diversity standpoint. And I was talking to this young man when we were flying down on the plane on, when did we leave, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday, whatever it was. And he's one of our interns that we have working with us at FedEx. And I was talking to him. I said, it's just certain things that I have to do to carry myself that probably won't benefit me, but it'll help you.
Right.
And there are things that I always look at. For instance, my hub employees, I put in a new program that they all can go to college for free. And I was trying to explain to him that I have to be at the table in order for those things to happen.
Right.
So that's why I have to sometimes give a little bit of who I am to make sure he's successful.
Right, right.
Again, that's what you call a leader. You have to be at the table. If I'm not there, you can't have a conversation. And so I'm always thinking about, because Shannon Brown is okay, I'm fine. Well, what can I do for him to help him grow to be a Shannon Brown one day? And those other 42,000 people to help them grow. And what do I need to do to take the responsibility to be there? So I can't do some things or say some things because personally it won't hurt me, but it'll hurt him.
Right, right, exactly. Ron, your thoughts again?
Well, I would start with one of the years I was in college, was the year Black Enterprise was founded. And I can tell you that it was instrumental in painting a picture of the opportunities that could exist in corporate America for African Americans. And ultimately, I got to know Earl Graves Sr., who served on my board at Aetna. And I always remember Earl said, you know, when you join a corporate board, they didn't put you on there because they couldn't find some Caucasian male who was as smart with a Harvard MBA to be on that board. You're on that board because you represent a distinct point of view. And your job is to be an advocate and a sponsor for that point of view. And whether it's the kind of work that was done by being at the table that Shannon's at, or being at the table in a corporate boardroom that says, what are we doing on diversity and inclusion? I want to see the numbers, and I want to see meaningful improvement in what we're doing. And so it really is important. When I chaired Aetna, I chaired our diversity initiative. It wasn't delegated to anybody else. It was important to me. And so the answer is, when you've got that opportunity to be at the table, be at the table. be a spokesman, be an advocate, not just for yourself, but there's a notion I have, 2 up, 2 down, just like Shannon talked about the intern. There are interns in your companies, there are new people who are where you were 2, 3, 4 years ago. What are you doing to help them get to where you are now? So it's that obligation to really help that next generation.
Right, right. Thank you both. And I think about that answer. I think about the personal work that I do, about having conversations with our sisters about their experiences, having conversations with our LGBT community and those lived experiences, about our Muslim, our Hindu brothers and sisters, and thinking about how does life happen for you so I can be an advocate, as you're saying, an activist, and sometimes even an accomplice to all of that. I think in the roles that you all are in, it's so important that that personal work happen daily so you can actually go out and lead by example, because people are looking for that. We want to begin to open this up for questions from our audience. And so, yes, please speak up. There's a mic coming. There's a mic coming. And please be thinking, we're going to do this for about 10 minutes. And please be thinking of your questions.
All right, so
Rule number 1, never give up the mic.
I was interested in knowing, like, what was the turning point in which led you to who you are now? Like chairman, CEO, I'm the lead of this division. I was just wondering.
I think the turning point was this notion I have of being better, where I had a goal, which was initially to get into the computer industry, and I got in that, and you're sitting in a meeting, and you see someone who's in a position a couple of levels up from you, and you say to yourself, I could do that. And then you say to yourself, what is it I need to know in order to be able to do it? And a lot of times, people worry too much about, am I going to get the next promotion? Am I going to get the next promotion? As opposed to putting their energy in, I'm going to be the best damn candidate for that position when it's open. And I'm going to make them want to hire me because I will produce better results. And so for me, it was literally level by level, moving through those chairs. And one day, I was sitting in a room with a group, and there was a group of CEOs there, and I said, I could do that. And I figured out what I needed to do it. And, that's the way it went. If someone had told me when I was your age that I would have been CEO of a company, I would have told them they were crazy.
I had a similar experience to his experience that, I always thought the next level was smarter than me. And when I got to the next level, I found out they were. And then by the third time, I said, you know what? I can do this just as good as anybody else. But I always knew that if I took care of my team, the people who were on the team, then I could beat anybody. And I always walk in the room, my mother told me, like you own the place. Don't ever let nobody make you feel less than, and don't you ever think you're better than. That's right. But you walk in there like you own that place and do the best that you can, you will always win.
Right. Young brother, one thing I probably would offer is that, who are the 5 people around you, right? And if the 5 people, and you probably already heard this, but if the 5 people around you are at the same level, you're never going to go anywhere. If the 5 people around you are above you, you're going far. And so part of being here at this conference is your ability to level up.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that answer. And my question kind of relates to something Mr. Brown has already hinted at. But my question was, in the corporate world where a lot of people don't look like us, how do you guys stay true to yourselves and your morals, and also just kind of like reassure yourselves that you belong there? We've kind of dealt with like imposter syndrome and how you guys overcame that in the corporate world, whether it be, you were the only black male in the corporate CEO chair, just kind of want to know how you guys have dealt with that concept, and if you guys would like to share.
It's back to his question, my answer that he's right. Most of the time, you're probably going to be the only one. But you have to have the confidence of why you're there in the first place, because of the responsibility that they've given you. and you walk in the room and do your thing like you own the place, because there are bullies on every playground, young man. So somebody's going to try to take you down or try to test to see what you know. And you just have to be strong and confident enough to ensure that you know what you're doing. Now, you have to study and make sure you practice your craft and be good at it. And once you're good at it, then anything else that they have a problem with, I've always said, that's your problem, not mine.
Ron?
Yeah, I would say, Shannon covered a lot of this, build the best team you can. If you build the best team, you'll produce the best results. If you produce the best results speak for themselves. And I think you have to have that level of confidence. If you act like you're there, even if you're uncomfortable, you will settle in and you will feel comfortable. But if you're producing the best results, let me tell you, there are a lot of people sitting in the same seat you're sitting in who've produced a lot worse results than you would produce. But you will be often the only one, and that's just the way it is.
Thank you.
I just want to make one other thing, because I think it was mentioned about the 5 people.
Right.
Everybody in this room needs a personal board of advisors. And they should be people who are above you, but who bring a distinctive competency and wisdom that can help you get to where you want to go. And you don't have to talk to them regularly. They're just people, when you're mulling things over, that you can get that kind of insight and counsel and wisdom. And what you'll find is people are enormously helpful. People really do want to help others, but you have to reach out and establish that relationship.
Right, thank you. We got time for 2 quick questions. 2, please. Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm Eric. I'm from South Side of Chicago. I'm with the Fellowship Initiative. My question was for every last one of you all. Well, you 3. I said, who in your life influenced you to be where you are now, and at what point did you realize the position that you're in now is what you want to do for the rest of your life?
Well, my mother was the biggest influence on me, because she was a single parent, and I don't know where she got it from, but this is probably the toughest 5-foot woman I've ever met in my life, man. I mean, she would knock you down and dare you to stare back at her. But I think he spoke about it. I didn't grow up to say I wanted to be the senior vice president of the Eastern Region Division and the chief diversity officer. It just worked itself out like that. It really doesn't matter. I mean, and that, when we're talking about the topic of leadership, if you can lead anywhere. I can walk out the door and lead at this old company at Aetna and be successful at it, or a black enterprise or whatever, because it's all the same. It's the people. That's who drives organizations to determine whether it's successful or not, are the people. And so when you develop that skill set, you can lead anywhere.
Right.
The thing I would say is get started. People worry too much about being right about what they want to do than getting started in doing something. And if you get started and you focus on figuring out what about it you like or you don't like, you can then move closer to things that you really like and want to do. It's a lot like sailing. Everybody sails, but you don't go from here to here. You go this way, then you go this way, then you go that way, and then finally you get there, depending on which way the wind's blowing. The number one thing is increase your optionality. You are the most important asset you have in your life. What are you doing to increase your economic value to yourself?
Right. Thank you. Next question, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. First and foremost, thank you so much for the insight you shared today. My name is Kevin. I am a co-founder of the Hustlers Guild and an advancement manager for the Urban Assembly. I really appreciated the conversation around dismantling hierarchical structures within organizations and that being important for leadership. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on folk that are in entry-level or mid-level positions in kind of dismantling and disrupting the hierarchy that often impedes true innovation and progress with companies and organizations.
The way I would say it is that it's important to understand the strategic intent of higher management. And the example I use is, company has 2 departments. You're in one that's not getting any resource. Everybody's starved. You get a new pencil, you got to turn in the old one. Someplace else, all the resource is going. You can be bitter and upset about it, or you can understand why the organization's doing it. If you understand the strategic intent, you understand the other segment has significant growth, and that's where the future is. So you can figure out how do you get over there as opposed to where you are. So seeing the bigger picture is extremely important, because then you understand what problems the organization is trying to solve. Once you know what problems they're trying to solve, you can be innovative in bringing those solutions. And I can tell you, if you bring solutions to important problems people have, they don't care who you are, they don't care what color you are, you could be from Mars. I can tell you, when Aetna was losing $1 million a day, they didn't care who I was if I could fix that problem.
Right. Shannon, hold on. I want to make sure that we get this last question. All right. Thank you, brother. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, we got it. How you gentlemen doing today? Almost took the mic from me. So my question is, actually wrote this down, make sure I say it correctly. What are a few things that you guys would do routinely or consistently on a daily basis that will contribute to your success now?
Great question.
Well, I spend a tremendous amount of time talking to my team members. That's all I do, because that's the only reason I'm there. I mean, they're responsible for the work. They're responsible for getting things done. My job is just to coach, advise, counsel, and help them. So I tell every employee, if your manager tell you to do X and you're responsible for X, then your manager is responsible for your growth and development. Don't let the manager off the hook. And that's where most employees, they allow the manager to get off the hook for taking care of their development, because they're there for you. They're there to support you and give you what you needed so you can grow within the organization. So I never let one of my managers off the hook. You ask me for X, I'm requesting X of you, because that's your responsibility to help me grow within this organization.
Yeah, just a couple of answers from different vector, which is, one of the things is to use your time wisely. And I always think about, what do I want to accomplish in the near term? What do I want to accomplish in 90 days? What do I accomplish by the end of the year? And so thinking about those multiple horizons causes you to constantly assess, are you putting enough effort into each of those three zones? On a personal basis, the other thing that I always did, which is really important, is I would take Sunday, take an hour or so to figure out what I was going to do the next week and how I wanted to spend my time. Because time just escapes. Whether you use it or not, it goes. And so really thinking about strategically, are you doing it, spending your time in a way that's consistent with what you want to spend it on and what you want to accomplish?
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate the time. I would be remiss if I did not ask you this question. It's a question that I ask all my guests on my show, the What's Your Revolution podcast. So, Shannon, what's your revolution, brother? What's your revolution?
Well, you know, I'm a different duck, man. You know, I don't spend a lot of time trying to, you know, figure things out that doesn't, you know, really drop to the bottom line, because I'm a bottom line guy.
Gotcha.
And I spend time trying to figure out, okay, what is it going to take for me to continue to grow so I can create an environment for my employees to be successful? And I try to keep everything simple. Right. My staff meeting's an hour. If we can't do it in an hour, then something's wrong. That we're spending too much time talking about something that's not going to net results, because I'm very results oriented.
Gotcha. That's a simple revolution. Keep it simple. Thank you. Ron, what's your revolution, brother?
Well, I would say it's right here. Yes. It's the book, 300 pages, took me 3 years. As a perfectionist, I cannot tell you how hard it is to write 300 pages that you're reasonably satisfied with. So it's my way of sharing what I know and hoping that people get some value out of it that help them get to where they want to get to.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for your time. Gratitude, brothers, for all the information and your success. Thank you so much.